I had made lemon cake from scratch, just like my late mother used to on my birthdays. I even dusted powdered sugar on top and arranged the little fake silver candles in a circle. Nothing extravagant, just something warm. I was turning 74 that day, and I knew not to expect balloons or flowers. I'd stopped hoping for those long ago. Still, I thought they would at least pretend. Just show up on time, maybe give me a card. But no, they arrived late. Marcus, my son, with his usual heavy silence, Janine, his wife, always on her phone, and Tyler, my grandson. He walked in wearing headphones and didn't even take them off until I asked him to. He was 17, taller than me now, but with a temper I had begun to fear. I'd raised Marcus mostly on my own, and when he and Janine started struggling financially, I opened my doors without hesitation. That was nearly 7 years ago. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. Now they live in my house. Use my car. I pay for everything. Groceries, electric bill, Tyler's private school. I don't complain. I never did. But that day, my birthday, was the first time I allowed myself to feel the weight of it all. Janine didn't even look up from her phone when I served dinner. Marcus muttered a quick, "Happy birthday," and dug into the meatloaf. Tyler just sighed. "Is this it?" he asked, eyes scanning the table. "Where's the real food?" "It's homemade," I said softly, trying not to let my voice shake. "I thought it'd be nice to do something simple. I told you I wanted sushi." He snapped, pushing the plate away. "That's enough, Tyler," Marcus said, not even looking up. But Tyler didn't stop. "You know what? This is so typical. She spends money on dumb stuff but won't even help me get my car. You said you would, remember? You promised." "I never promised that," I said. "I said I would think about helping when I got my next check." He stood up. "Yeah, and then you spent it on stupid groceries again, probably." "Don't talk to your grandmother like that," Marcus muttered. "I'm not his grandmother," Tyler yelled. "She's just a bitter old woman who thinks she can buy our respect." And before I could even process it, before I could stand or speak, he slapped me. It wasn't hard, but it was loud. It wasn't violent, but it was real. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just froze. My hand slowly touched the side of my face. The silence in the room was unbearable. Janine didn't look up. Marcus didn't get up. Tyler turned and walked away like it hadn't happened. I stood up slowly. I walked to the kitchen. My knees felt weak. I opened the junk drawer and took out the ticket, the one I'd bought impulsively at the gas station 4 days ago. I hadn't even checked it. Just tucked it away under a stack of rubber bands and receipts. I went to my bedroom, shut the door, and locked it. Then I sat down at my desk and searched the lottery numbers. When I saw the results, I blinked. I blinked again. I refreshed the page. It was real. $38 million. The breath left my chest. I didn't smile. I didn't feel joy. I just felt. Still. I sat there for a long time, listening to them outside my room, arguing about the TV volume, complaining about the internet speed, like nothing had happened, like my face hadn't just been slapped by the same boy whose school tuition I had paid for 3 years straight. I folded the ticket carefully and placed it inside a blank envelope. Then I stood and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. Not old. Tired. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself admit it. I opened the closet and pulled out the old suitcase from under the bed. It still had a luggage tag from a trip I never took. I unzipped it slowly. My hands were steady. I packed 1 sweater, 2 blouses, a pair of jeans, my medication, a scarf. I slid the lottery ticket into the inside zipper pocket, and then I sat, back down, and waited. Waited for the house to grow quiet. Waited for them to forget I was even there. They would. They always did. At 11:48 p.m., I opened the door and walked to the living room. Tyler was asleep on the couch with his mouth open. Marcus was passed out in the recliner. Janine was watching a show on her phone with earbuds in. Excluded parties: Marcus William Taylor, Janine Elise Taylor Tyler, Michael Taylor. Each exclusion was followed by a clear statement: no provision shall be made to any party who benefited from my finances during my lifetime, but failed to protect or respect me in return. No misunderstandings. No room for arguments. I signed it, sealed it, and left it in Greg's hands. The next morning, I went to the post office and picked up a large brown package waiting under my new name. Inside was a photo album. No note, no explanation. The photos were old, from before I left. Pictures of Tyler as a baby, Marcus in his teens, family Christmases. One photo, in particular, stopped me. A picture of me, in the kitchen, wearing the same apron I had on the day Tyler slapped me. I put the photo aside. Then I went through the rest of the package and found something else, a folded letter with Janine's handwriting. She hadn't signed it, but the tone was unmistakable. You may have moved on, but we haven't. I hope you find what you're looking for. But I hope, one day, you understand what it cost the rest of us. I folded the letter and didn't respond. Because I had already counted the cost, many times, and I had paid it in full. My past wasn't erased. It just wasn't allowed to come through the door anymore. That week, Louise and I went to a retirement celebration at the community center. One of the women I'd worked with at the literacy program had finally gotten her GED. She was 72. Her grandkids stood with her, clapping, proud. She cried when they handed her the certificate. After the event, she found me in the hallway and hugged me. You made this happen, she said. I didn't argue. I didn't minimize it. I just nodded. Because it was true. I had spent decades pouring myself into people who didn't appreciate it. Now I was putting that same energy into women who did. Women who saw me. Not as a wallet. Not as a maid. Not as a silent, disposable elder. As someone who mattered. A month later, I received another visit. But this one was different. An older woman. Quiet voice, nervous smile. My name is Cheryl, she said. I used to live down the street from you, years ago. We weren't close, but I always remembered you. I invited her in. We sat with tea. She took a breath. Your story, it's kind of made the rounds, quietly, among women like me. I didn't say anything. She continued. I left my husband last year. He didn't hit me, but he made me feel small. For decades, I read about the scholarship you funded, and I applied. I blinked. I got in, she said. I'm going back. To school. I just looked at her. She smiled, tears in her eyes. I wanted to say thank you. That's all. She stood. I followed her to the door. Before she left, she looked at me and said, You didn't just disappear. You reappeared in the right place. After she left, I stood on the porch a while. The world was moving on. I was a part of it now. That afternoon, I went to the bank and made one last transfer, $25,000 to start a small grant for older women starting over after family estrangement. No ceremony, no press release, just action. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived from the bank that used to manage the house where Marcus and Janine had lived. The foreclosure had finally been completed. The property sold. They had moved out of state. No forwarding address. It was over. I walked into my bedroom, opened the small safe, and pulled out the lottery ticket, still in its envelope, still crisp. Held it for a minute, then I shredded it. The money had done its job. I didn't need the symbol anymore. That evening, I invited Louise over. We made soup, watched a documentary, and talked about nothing important. Before she left, she looked at me and said, You seem settled. I am, I replied. Finally, as she walked out, she paused. You ever think you'll talk to them again? I thought about it, then said, no, and I didn't feel bad. Not because I hated them, but because I had made peace with what they were, and what I wasn't anymore. Not an ATM, not a silent wall, not a doormat. I was something else now, free, and they'd never see it coming. That I'd be waiting? That I'd cave? I went into my bedroom, opened the safe, and pulled out a file. Inside was a printed summary of my will, I reviewed it line by line. Every cent was accounted for. Every clause was bulletproof. Every donation was directed. There was nothing for them, not even a symbolic dollar. That night, they came back. I didn't answer the knock. I heard Tyler's voice through the door. "Grandma, please." I turned off the light. "You can't keep doing this," he said. "You're not the victim. You just left. You ghosted us." Another knock, a little louder. "We lost everything. Do you even care?" Then silence. The next morning, there was a note taped to the door. "We're not going away until you do the right thing." I gave it to the police. The restraining order covered both Marcus and Tyler. Janine wasn't listed. Yet. Later that week, I filed an extension to include her. I also added surveillance cameras to the property. Quiet, discreet, but positioned at every angle. If they wanted to make this a campaign, I'd treat it like one. What they didn't know, couldn't possibly understand, was that I wasn't scared. Not anymore. I was prepared. 3 days passed. Then came the voicemail. A woman's voice. Older. Sharp. "Linda, this is your sister-in-law, Carol. I don't know what's going on, but Marcus is beside himself. Tyler's been struggling. I can't believe you've gone this far. I hope you think long and hard about what kind of legacy you're leaving behind." Legacy. That word stuck with me, because I had thought about it for months. And I'd already decided. My legacy wasn't going to be funding Marcus's next bad idea, or covering Janine's credit card debt, or helping Tyler get out of whatever mess he was bound to walk into next. My legacy would be every book that ended up in the hands of a woman learning to read at 68, every emergency shelter bed funded by the trust, every teenage girl who got a scholarship in my name. That was my legacy. They had their chance. They used it up. The last straw came on a Tuesday morning when I received a subpoena. They were suing me for intentional emotional distress and abandonment of family duty. Greg laughed when he read it. "They don't have a case," he said. "But they're hoping to scare you. They want to settle. They think this will get you to negotiate." It didn't. We filed a response. Then a counterclaim for harassment. Within 2 weeks, their attorney backed out. The case was dropped, but I wasn't done. I issued a final notice through Greg. Any future contact from Marcus, Janine, or Tyler will result in further legal action. This is not a threat. This is a boundary. We mailed it, certified, tracked, documented, and then we went back to living. That Friday, I sat on the back porch with Louise, watching the tomato vines stretch up the trellis. The sun was steady, the breeze mild. "You ever think they'll stop?" she asked. "I don't care. Anymore," I said. "I used to want closure. Now I just want peace." She nodded. "And do you have it?" I looked out at the garden, at the quiet house, at the road where no one had driven by in over an hour. "Yes," I said, and I meant it. The court's dismissal came quietly, with no drama, no final confrontation. Just a letter confirming that all claims had been dropped and no further legal action would proceed. Greg called to tell me, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "They've got nothing left to come after," he said, "and they know it." I thanked him, hung up, and sat for a long time at the kitchen table. It wasn't joy I felt. It wasn't triumph. It was quiet. The kind of quiet I had been working toward since the day Tyler raised his hand to me. Since Marcus looked away. Since Janine never looked up at all. I got up, pulled a manila envelope from my drawer, and opened the most recent draft of my will. I had updated it one last time after the court nonsense. Not because anything had changed, but because I wanted every sentence to be airtight. Beneficiaries. $250,000 to the local literacy center, $100,000 to the community shelter, $150,000 to fund a rotating scholarship for women over 50 returning to school. Remaining assets to be placed in a long-term trust, distributing small monthly grants to elderly women escaping family abuse or neglect. "Because you slapped me and no one cared. I didn't mean to." "You did it," I said. "That's enough." He looked away. "I'm different now," he mumbled. "I hope so." I replied. But that doesn't mean I owe you anything. He didn't follow me after that. When I got home, I changed my locks. Again. Louise came over that night. She didn't ask questions, just sat beside me and watched some local crime show on TV. After she left, I took out my notebook. I wrote down everything that had happened that week. Not because I wanted to remember it, but because I needed a record, proof that I didn't imagine it, that the peace I'd built wasn't something I'd invented, because they were trying to crawl back in, not for love, not for reconciliation, for access. And I was done being accessed. I lit a fire in the fireplace and sat beside it, notebook in hand, watching the pages dry from my sweaty fingers. I wasn't running anymore. I was guarding something, and this time, it was me. After the restraining order and Tyler's failed apology, things were quiet for a few weeks. I went back to my routine, volunteering at the literacy program, planting tomatoes in my backyard, and reading at night with the windows open. It was starting to feel like I had truly put distance between myself and all of it, between who I used to be and who I was now. Then the envelope came. It was delivered to the community center. Handwritten, no return address. But the handwriting was unmistakable. Janine's, sharp, slanted, slightly aggressive even when she was pretending to be calm. I considered throwing it away unopened, but something in me wanted to know just how far she'd go. I opened it. 3. Letter was short. Just 3 sentences. We know what you did with the money. We know about the trust. You could have just helped your family. You didn't have to disappear and turn everyone against us. No greeting, no signature. Just that. They didn't know I had changed my legal name. They didn't know the address of the trust or the new title of the property. But they had found something. Maybe one of the local organizations I donated to had said too much. Maybe Tyler had recognized me somewhere, or maybe Marcus had paid someone to dig. It didn't matter. What mattered was the intent behind it. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a threat. It was resentment. They were angry that I'd taken my power back. I scanned the letter, documented it with Greg, and locked it away. Then, I sat at my dining room table for a long time, thinking. I had spent decades being useful, being generous, being quiet. Now I was being punished for being unavailable. I took a trip the following weekend, packed a small bag and drove out to a small cabin lodge in the mountains about 3 hours away. No cell reception, just pine trees, cool air, and the sound of nothing. I needed space to think, because part of me was tempted to respond, not to make peace. I was done with that, but to close the door for good, on my terms. On the 3rd night I wrote a letter, not to send, just to write it, for me. Marcus, you were raised in a house where your father left early, and I tried to be both. I worked 2 jobs, I packed your lunches, I made sure you had everything, and somewhere along the way I taught you that I was permanent, that I would always say yes. That was my mistake. You brought Janine into that house with promises I didn't make. She treated me like furniture, and you let it happen. Tyler learned from both of you, so when he hit me, it wasn't an accident. It was the natural conclusion of years of entitlement and neglect. I left because you all made it clear I wasn't a person. I was a resource, and now you're angry that the resource ran dry. That's not abandonment. That's boundaries, and you don't get to rewrite it. I folded the page and burned it in the cabin fireplace, not out of drama, out of finality. When I returned home, I found my neighbor Marcia waiting on my porch. She's in her 60s, retired, from teaching, and always brings too much zucchini from her garden. They were here, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Who? Your son? And the girl? Your granddaughter? Grandson, I corrected flatly. She nodded. Right. They knocked. I didn't answer. They looked angry, like they were expecting something. I thanked her, locked my front door, and sat on the couch. So they had come. Again. I wondered what they expected to find. I recognized my old armchair still in the corner, abandoned and fraying. It looked like it hadn't been moved since the day I walked out. They'd let it rot. The comments on the listing said it needed substantial repair. The asking price was $179,000, much less than it was worth when I kept the roof from caving in and the pipes from freezing. I stared at the screen for a long time, then shut the laptop. I didn't need to keep track anymore. I already knew where this story was going. That week, Louise brought over a printout of something Janine had posted online. It was a fundraiser. Title: Help Us Recover from Elder Abandonment. There was a photo of Tyler with a forced smile and Janine beside him looking tired. The caption claimed they had taken me in, cared for me in my old age, and were now homeless after I walked out and cut all support. It was a lie. A bold one. They were asking for $50,000. I called Greg, my attorney. He took screenshots and started preparing a response. I didn't want to go public, but I also wasn't going to let them profit from the narrative they'd built, on top of my back. He sent a cease and desist letter to the fundraising platform and demanded they remove the campaign or face legal consequences for libel. 3 days later, the page disappeared, but the damage was already done. Old acquaintances from the neighborhood, women I had once shared recipes with, people I'd helped carpool when their kids were sick, started sending me emails. Some were supportive, others weren't. I can't believe you left your family like that, Linda. I hope it was worth it. I always knew Janine had a tough time with you. You were always so private. They didn't know anything. But that had never stopped anyone. I started locking my mailbox. I canceled all magazine subscriptions. I changed my name legally to Helen Gardner, just like the trust. I stopped checking email. I went quiet. I stayed focused. The community center downtown was organizing a literacy program for senior women. They needed a coordinator. I signed up. I used some of the trust money, anonymously, to cover new books, a supply budget, and even bus fare for participants who couldn't drive. It felt good, not like charity, like control, like I was doing something that mattered. And then, as I was locking up one evening after class, I saw him, Marcus. He was standing across the street, near the corner, partially behind a stop sign. His arms were crossed. He looked thinner. His hair had more gray in it. His coat was buttoned wrong. He didn't come closer. I froze for a second, then walked to my car. He called out, "Mom?" I didn't respond. He jogged across the street. "Mom, please just talk to me." I got in the car. Closed the door. He stood by the window. I didn't roll it down. "You can't keep pretending I don't exist," he said. I started the engine. He knocked on the glass. "You think money fixes everything? You think leaving was noble? You broke this family." I drove away. When I got home, I sat in the driveway for a long time. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. He had followed me, probably tracked me down after the legal notice. He wanted something. He always did. The next morning, a note was taped to my front door. "I don't want your money, I just want to fix this." No signature. I didn't believe it for a second. I gave the note to Greg. He had a restraining order filed the same week. It passed without contest. I doubt Marcus even tried to fight it. But it wasn't over. A week later, Tyler showed up at the library. He had grown taller. His face was harder now. Jaw clenched. Hands stuffed in his sweatshirt pocket. He waited until I walked out, then approached me on the sidewalk. "Grandma." I didn't respond. He stepped in front of me. I said, "I'm sorry." I looked him in the eye. "For what?" He hesitated. "For everything." "That's vague," I said. "Be specific." He didn't speak. "You hit me," I said calmly. "You called me a bitter old woman. You watched your mother lie about me. You mocked me while eating the food I paid for in the house I owned. So, again, Tyler, what exactly are you sorry for?" He stared at the ground. I stepped past him. He followed. "You could have at least told us. We didn't know you were struggling." I stopped. You think I left because I was struggling? He shrugged. I left because I was being used. Because I was disrespected. She said. It was a screenshot. Someone had posted a photo on social media. A blurry image of my face taken years ago from a holiday gathering at my house. The caption read, "If anyone has seen our mother-jawed grandmother, please let us know. She's missing and may be confused. We're very concerned. She needs medication." My chest tightened. It was a lie. They were trying to make people believe I was mentally unstable, that I had wandered off, that I was ill. Louise looked at me, waiting. "They're trying to control the narrative," I said flatly. "You want me to help you respond?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, I want them to get exactly what they deserve." She didn't say anything, just sat down and sipped her tea. That night, I wrote a letter. I didn't sign it. I didn't put a return address. I mailed it to Marcus's house using a P.O. box from the next county over. Inside was a copy of a legal form, relinquishment of property rights. Their address was now no longer connected to me in any way. I included one sentence, printed clearly, "Stop lying. I am not missing. I am not confused. I am finally free." I knew it would shake them. 2 days later, Janine emailed. "So, you're alive. We just wanted to help. We thought something happened to you. You didn't have to be cruel about it." I laughed. Cruel? They hadn't seen Cruel. Cruel was being ignored while washing dishes for people who never thanked me. Cruel was being asked for money every week while watching my own savings disappear. Cruel was having my grandson hit me and being treated like I caused it. Cruel was them. I clicked archive on the email and went on with my day. A week later, the bank listed the house for foreclosure. They were out. I had expected them to try. Calling again. But I hadn't expected what came next. A woman knocked on my door. I was pulling weeds in the backyard. I stood slowly and wiped my hands on my jeans. "Are you Helen Gardner?" she asked. "Yes," she smiled, nervous. "I'm from Channel 9 News. Your family said you were missing, but a source told us you're living here, that you're not missing at all, that you won the lottery and disappeared." I froze. She kept talking. "I'm not here to ambush you. I think your story might be something a lot of people would relate to, especially women your age." "I'm not interested," I said. She nodded quickly. "Of course, I understand. But if you ever want to talk, we'd love to help you tell your side." "There is no side," I said. "There's only the truth, and I don't owe it to anyone." She handed me her card anyway. I took it out of politeness and walked back inside. I burned it later in the fireplace. I spent the rest of the day quiet. They had tried to make me look crazy. Now they were trying to make me look selfish. It wouldn't stop. I knew that now. They wouldn't accept losing their grip, so I decided to make sure they never got it back. I scheduled a legal appointment with Greg. We updated the trust. I added a new clause to my will. My assets would be transferred directly to specific organizations, women's shelters, elder care funds, literacy programs. Not a penny to Marcus, not a penny to Janine, not even a college fund for Tyler. I didn't believe in rewarding abuse, even generational. 2 days later, I received a letter, handwritten, no return address. The writing was sloppy. Angry. "You're a coward. You abandoned your family. After everything we did for you, I'll never forgive you. I hope you rot alone in your little shack." No signature. But I recognized Tyler's handwriting. I folded the letter, placed it in a file. I didn't cry. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the porch, and watched the sunset like it had nothing to do with them, because it didn't. They were no longer part of my story. They were a chapter I had already finished, and from here on out, every page was mine. 4 months after I left, the foreclosure went through. The house where I'd spent nearly 40 years of my life, where I'd raised Marcus, buried my husband, and watched Tyler take his first steps, was no longer ours. Or more specifically, no longer mine, because it had never really been theirs to begin with. I followed the listing online out of morbid curiosity. A local real estate agency had posted the photos. The walls were dirty, the carpet stained, and the kitchen looked like no one had cleaned it in months. Forwarded from my old address, the one I had finally canceled, Janine's handwriting on the front. Inside was a short note. "You left without saying anything. Marcus is worried. Tyler has been acting out. We've been calling. The mortgage hasn't been paid. Let us know if you're okay. Also, we need your bank information to handle the bills this month." That was all. No apology. No acknowledgement. Not even a question about why. Just the usual list of what they wanted, what they expected. I folded the letter and slid it into the trash. Then I changed my number. From that point on, I didn't look back. They sent another letter. The next week. This time, Marcus wrote it. "Mom, we're really struggling here. I know things got tense, but you can't just disappear. Tyler's failing 2 classes. Janine is stressed. Please call us. We need you." There it was again. "We need you." Always the same. I never replied. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I made a small donation to the library under my alias. I helped fund repairs at the community center without attaching my name. I sent a check to the animal shelter for $5,000 and walked past it the next week to hear the staff celebrating the anonymous miracle. I kept walking. I didn't need credit. I didn't need attention. I needed space. One evening, I sat on my porch watching the sun dip behind the trees. Louise came by with 2 cups of iced tea. We didn't talk much, just sat. At one point, she asked, "Do you ever miss them?" I didn't lie. "Sometimes," I said, "but I don't miss how they made me feel." She nodded. "That's the difference, isn't it?" I nodded back. Later that night, I pulled out a piece of stationery and began writing something I never thought I would. My will. Not out of fear. Not because I was sick. Because I wanted to be sure. I didn't want them to get a single cent. Every dollar was going somewhere else. The library, the shelter, women's centers. I even set aside a fund for elderly women escaping abusive homes. I knew what it meant to be slapped and blamed for it. I knew what it meant to be unseen. Not anymore. I wrote each detail slowly, carefully, thoughtfully, and when I signed my name, at the bottom, I felt something click into place. This was the life I should have lived all along. And now, finally, it was mine. 3 months had passed since I left. The town had folded itself around me like a quiet blanket, and I had no intention of ever returning to the life I had before, not even out of curiosity, not even to see if they missed me. I had created a new rhythm. Mondays were for groceries, Tuesdays for volunteering at the library. Wednesdays, I baked something, just for myself. Nothing complicated. Sometimes banana, bread, sometimes cornbread. I liked watching things rise in the oven. It gave me something steady to look at, but despite the calm, I hadn't forgotten. I hadn't forgotten what it felt like to be slapped by my grandson on my own birthday. I hadn't forgotten the silence from my son, or the way Janine kept scrolling on her phone like it didn't matter. What had changed wasn't the memory. It was how much it no longer controlled me. I was different now. I hadn't blocked their emails, mostly because I wanted a record of what they said. I never answered. But I read them, like I was watching strangers unravel. Marcus's tone had started shifting. At first he was demanding, then annoyed, then guilty. By the 3rd month he was just desperate. "Mom, please. I don't know what to do anymore. We've fallen behind on everything. Tyler keeps asking where you are. Janine is blaming me. I know you're mad, but this is getting serious. We're going to lose the house." It didn't surprise me. That house had been in my name for 35 years. I had paid off the mortgage in full before Marcus and Janine ever moved in. I was the one who refinanced it later to help cover their expenses when Marcus lost his job, which he never really replaced, and I was the one who had kept the bills paid, every single month. Until the day I left, I had already informed the bank that I no longer lived at that address. I stopped all payments. I legally severed my responsibility. The house would revert to default if they didn't step up. They hadn't, and now they were panicking. I didn't feel sorry. I felt neutral. But that changed when Louise showed up at my door with a printed photo in her hand. I think you should see this. Not one of them noticed me. Not one of them looked up. I opened the front door and stepped out. The air was cold, but it didn't bother me. I didn't look back. I walked 3 blocks to the 24-hour diner, sat in a booth, and ordered a coffee. Then I called a cab. "Where to?" the driver asked. I thought for a moment, then said the name of a town I'd visited once with my sister, 30 years ago. It had a lake, a library, and a bakery on the corner that sold real apple pie. That was enough for me. The driver looked at me through the mirror. "You sure?" I nodded. "Yeah, I'm sure." I didn't cry in the car. I didn't feel triumphant either. I felt numb. But I also felt something else. TTP, www.youtube.com, vows vengeance done. They slapped the wrong woman, and now I was gone. The cab dropped me off just after sunrise. The town looked exactly like I remembered, quiet, old, but not worn down. The buildings were short, with faded paint and flower boxes, and people actually looked up when they passed you on the sidewalk. I checked into the small inn near the lake using the name Helen Gardner. Gardner was my mother's maiden name. Nobody asked questions. The woman at the front desk, Carol, gave me a warm smile when I said I was here for a change of pace. "Retired?" she asked politely. "Something like that," I said. She didn't press. I spent the first 3 days sleeping. Really sleeping. I kept my phone off. I didn't check the news. I didn't think about Marcus or Janine or Tyler. I didn't think about the slap or the silence that came after it. I didn't even look at the lottery ticket. I kept it zipped inside the suitcase, behind a bottle of arthritis cream and a folded sweater. By the 4th day, I walked down to the bakery. I ordered coffee and an apple turnover, sat by the window, watched people pass. Nobody asked me for anything. Nobody needed money or demanded rides or slammed doors. I felt invisible, in the best way. At night, I opened the envelope and looked at the ticket again. The numbers were still the same, still real. I had told no one, not even my sister's old friend Louise, who lived nearby and whom I eventually called just to hear a familiar voice. We met for lunch the next afternoon. She didn't ask about Marcus or Janine or Tyler. She just looked me over, held my hands, and said, "I'm glad you're here." I told her I'd needed to get away. That was all. It was enough. After a week, I walked into a small financial office near the edge of town. A man named Greg helped me set up a blind trust. He didn't blink when I handed him the ticket. His hands moved carefully, respectfully. "We'll claim it for you through the trust," he said. "Nobody needs to know your name. That's the idea," I told him. Within days, the money was confirmed. The first deposit landed in the new account. More than I ever dreamed of. I stared at the numbers on the printed page like I was reading someone else's story. Greg looked at me across the desk. "What's the first thing you want to do?" I thought about it, and then I said, "I want to buy a house, but not a big one, just a quiet one, with a front porch and some space." We found it by the end of the month. A little white house with light blue shutters, 2 bedrooms, a small garden out back. It had been on the market for nearly a year. Nobody had shown much interest. I paid. In full. Cash. The seller asked no questions. When the papers were signed, I sat in the empty living room and took a deep breath. For the first time in 74 years, I had a home that was mine. Only mine, not my parents', not Marcus's, not the family's, mine. I bought a couch, a table, 2 chairs, a kettle, and that was all I needed. I didn't tell anyone. The second month, I started volunteering at the library, filing books, helping older folks sign up for email accounts. I didn't need the money. I needed the rhythm, the silence, the feeling of being useful without being used. I saw my reflection in the library's glass doors one afternoon and barely recognized myself. The woman staring back wore jeans and sneakers. Her hair was loose. Her shoulders weren't hunched. Her hands weren't clenched. She wasn't bracing for anyone's next complaint. She looked steady. I started sleeping with the windows open. I read magazines again. I went on walks without checking the time. Then came the letter. It arrived at the inn,